So last night I picked up this vintage Diamondback mountain bike for just 20 beans, and I also just so happened to have this 20-inch folding bicycle behind me that I got for free, and I'm going to try to mash the two together and create a vintage mountain bike mini velo. It sounds like it's going to be crazy and pretty stupid, but maybe it'll be crazy, stupid, cool. So I know the first thing you're thinking is that if I put 20-inch wheels on this vintage mountain bike, it's going to drop the bottom bracket so low that it's going to be unrideable. Now, that might be true, and that might be the case. I have some workarounds if that does happen, but I think because the vintage mountain bike has slightly less of a bottom bracket drop compared to like a road bike, it's not going to be too bad. I think in total it's going to be about 2 inches of drop. This obviously isn't going to be perfect. We're just going to try it. All right, first things first, we got to strip down this mountain bike. Alright, now I'm going to be harvesting the wheels off of this poor folding bike. And I might be harvesting other parts off this because it's got a cool little rack on the back and a cool little basket on the front. So you might be like, yo, Nick, why don't you just keep this folding bike since it's perfectly good and use this as a mini velo? Well, it's not exactly a mini velo, is it? It's a folding bike, which I would rather have an actual mini velo with a frame that does not fold. So I did some looking online to see if these parts would be compatible, and I'm pretty sure the hub spacing should be the same in the rear, but in the front it's 94, and on the front of this should be a 100. So we're just going to check the hub spacing. Yep, that's 135, and then if I'm correct, this should also be 135, which it is. And the front hub spacing here should be 100, which it is perfectly 100, and this one's a little bit narrow at 94, if I remember correctly. Yep, 94. So since this is a steel fork, we're going to do a little bit of cold setting to bring this in a little bit. Since it's steel, it should bend no problem. And since these are bolts on here and not a quick release, we should be able to just put it on here and just slowly tighten it up evenly, and it should just bend the fork just a few, I think 3 millimeters on both sides to get it to fit perfectly. So that's the plan. You might be saying at this point, Nick, what about the brakes? Well, I have an idea for that because of the unique brake that is on this bike. I have an idea of how we can get it to work. So, all right, let's try to harvest this wheel now. Gonna be a little interesting because of this drum brake on here, which is how we're gonna try to put brakes on this. It's a drum brake style brake, which I've never worked on before. So this is the drum brake right here, and the way that this works is it attaches to the chainstay here as kind of the fixed point, which I think I'll be able to kind of create something like this on the chainstay of the Diamondback. I figure if this whole drum brake is just held on by this one little bolt, it shouldn't take much to fix this to the chainstay and get it to work. So, alright, the wheel is free. Hooray, it's free. Alright, first order of business, torque disc removal. Alright, it's time to officially see how silly this is going to look. Will it even fit at all with the drum brake? It looks like it might just barely fit. It's like super tight. Alright, that's in place for sure, bro. Oh my gosh, look at that thing. That's crazy. I'm so happy that the drum brake fit because it just barely seems like it wasn't gonna fit. I can't wait to get the front one on and just see like if this pedal is like 1.5 inches from the ground, I'm fine with that. I can kind of expect that to happen. Let's see if it shifts. It does. Oh, that's so cool. Gonna have to adjust that obviously, but this has friction shifters, so I should be able to get this to work with the 7-speed, even though that this was a 6-speed before. It looks so sick so far. Alright, let's get the front wheel off of this bad boy and get it on this bad boy. This basket's super cool. I'm gonna definitely see if I can somehow throw it on this bike then. All right, sweet. All right, it's that moment of truth moment. Let's flip this baby over. Okay, looks freaking crazy. Let's see if the pedals scrape the ground. Oh man, they're so close to the ground. They're probably less than an inch from the ground. All right, so as she sits on the carpet here, we're about an inch and a half off of the ground. Yeah, that's gonna be a little dangerous. Okay, well, I have some other ideas of ways that we can make it a little bit better. First, I think we should maybe test ride it. It's crazy. You just cannot pedal on any sort of angle at all. Crank's just absolutely smacked into the ground. That about sums it up, doesn't it? So obviously these pedals are still way too low to the ground, but I have some parts on the way that I think will fix that problem. And while we wait for those to arrive, let's take everything else off the bike, like the cable and housing. Let's replace this seat and do some other things that's gonna have this bike totally ready to go when those new parts arrive. This looks so much cleaner without the stickers on. I love how this looks. Alright, so the next step then is going to be trying to polish up this frame. I'm going to maybe use some T-cut on this because this paint scheme is really cool, and I'm hoping that I can bring out a little bit of shine and make it look even better. Alright, so you're going to want some damp paper towels, or, well, this is like a shop rag technically. It's kind of looks like a paper towel, but it's like a little bit thicker. But ideally you would want like a microfiber cloth per se, but this will have to do for now because I don't really have any at the moment. So I've got some damp cloths, and then we've got these shop rags, which we're going to actually put the T-cut on. So once you shake it, you'll just put a small bit onto a shop rag like this, and start going to town. So alright, so we just got a little delivery right here, and you might be able to guess what's in this box. Because remember, the whole point of what we're trying to do here is get these pedals farther away from the ground so there's not as much pedal striking going on. So the most logical way to do that would be shorter cranks. Now these are 152 millimeter cranks. These are the 175s that were on there before, and then these are the 152s. So essentially we're shortening the cranks by almost an inch. I think these 152 cranks are going to make a huge difference, but I also got something else in the mail just now that I think is going to help as well. We'll get to that in just a second. First, let's put these cranks on. Alright, so the most important thing to know when you're ordering a crank set and a chainring is that you get the correct BCD distance. So this one's 104 millimeter BCD, which is basically the distance between these bolt holes here so that it matches up perfectly, which this one does. For some reason, these like do not want to fit into this crank arm, which is really weird. Never had that issue before. Bet we could like hammer them in, but is that gonna be a pain in the ass if we ever had to get them out? Maybe we'll just see if we can use a mallet to get it in. Alright, seems to have worked. Definitely a little weird though. 4 stars for sure. If not like 2 stars. Alright, let's just, I guess we're just gonna have to hammer all these in and just hopefully they all go in straight enough. What the hell, dude? Literally stripping it. Alright, we need to see if we have longer bolts. These bolts that it came with just are not going through the thick material. Just had to dig through the attic for like 15 minutes. Hopefully there's some chainring bolts in here. Let's open this up. I did not think I would need this stuff, so I put it in the attic. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, I need it. So let's see if we can find some chainring bolts. Alright, these might work. Alright, I really hope one of these bolts, or some of these bolts will work rather, because otherwise, we already hammered these nuts in here, so yes, these definitely work. Definitely. Alright, so my other strategy for lifting the bike a little higher off the ground is going to be replacing these tires. These are 20 by 1.75, and I'm going to swap them out for these bad boys right here, which are 20 by 2.1. So this should add a little bit of extra beefiness to the wheels to kind of lift the bike up a little bit, essentially. Alright, there's your wheel. That looks so good. Alright, so now it's time to connect the final piece of the puzzle. We need to connect this drum brake to the chainstay here so it has a fixed point so that when you brake, it doesn't just spin around. So the way that this works is this will connect to this bolt here. So we need to have some sort of piece that goes around the chainstay, connects to this bolt, and holds this in place. And then this spring connects to here, and then a cable runs through here. This is like the cable stop, and then the cable goes through and pulls on this lever right here, and that's what actuates the brake. So we need to find some sort of piece of metal that can connect to this bolt, wrap around here, and then fix to that point. I actually just found a piece of metal that's a straight piece of metal that might be the perfect piece of metal for this, and I just randomly had this in my parts bin. I don't even know what it's from, but I'm thinking that if I can bend it to the same diameter as this part of the chainstay right here, and then connect it there and connect it in the back with a bolt, that should be pretty strong. It's a pretty decently thick piece of metal, and I think it will be good enough. So we just need to try to bend this piece. So the diameter of our chainstay here is 16 millimeters. This screwdriver handle is just over 16 millimeters thick, so we'll use this as sort of our gauge while we're working on it over here on the desk. So I'm just going to try to straight up bend it and see how it goes. Alright, I feel pretty good about that. Looks pretty solid. It looks a little janky, but kind of in a cool way too. It's got like a very... I don't know how to describe that look, but let me know how you would describe this look down in the comments. Alright, let's get the rest of the brake together now. Alright, now we're gonna connect the old cable and housing from the folding bike and just put it on this bike. It should be the right length. Hopefully we can find a nice elegant way to route it. I also have this purple, so maybe this will be long enough to run it to here. Yeah, that would be pretty cool. We'll reuse this cable. This cable should be like the perfect length, hopefully. By the way, I also got these foam grips for the bike. These are just Rock Bro grips. So they were like $9 for foam grips. Seem pretty nice. I decided to add this extra bit of housing right here just to protect the cable a little bit more. And also, it was kind of sitting a little wonky in this barrel adjuster right here, so I wanted it to kind of have a little bit more structure so that when it pulls, it's not just pulling up against this metal. It could cause the cable to like rip over time or break over time. So I just did that really quick. And now I'm about to put the final touch on this brake. Alright, so I really want to attach this basket to the bike. I feel like it gives it a really cool look, but I wasn't sure how I was going to connect it up here. Obviously, it connects down here to the axle, so that should be pretty easy. But I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to connect it up here at the top. And I have this little reflector piece here. This is sort of like a, I don't know, you could call it like an L bracket shaped, even though it's kind of like curved. And this was mounted up like this. So I think if I change this faceplate to like a flat angle to where it's like a right angle 90 degrees kind of thing, I'll be able to mount it to this part and have it there. So you'll see what I'm talking about. Nice, it's pretty solid. So we're gonna do a side-by-side measurement of how close the pedal is to the ground on this State 4130 all-road bike and compare it to this Mini Velo that I just made, just so we can kind of get a rough estimate of what a typical, pedal distance from the ground would be. So on the State bike, it looks like we're at 4 inches or about 100 millimeters. And on the Mini Velo, we're at just 3 inches or 75 millimeters. So we're out for a little test ride with the Mini Velo, and so far everything works really good. The brake works, the pedals are clearing the ground pretty decently. I would probably put a bigger chainring on this, and I would also maybe even run shorter cranks. I feel like the 152s are clearing the ground just fine, but it would be nice if there was just a little bit more clearance. Overall, I think the bike looks really sweet, and I really like the basket. So I feel like this project turned out a little bit better than I expected even. Is it ridiculous? Yes, it's definitely ridiculous, but I think it's pretty cool as well. So if you made it this far into the video, be sure to subscribe because we make videos like this all the time. Be sure to like the video, and thank you so much for watching.